So hi everybody, I'm Jan Ryan, and I'm Executive Director of Entrepreneurship and Innovation here at the College of Fine Arts. And we come alongside creatives to help them connect the dots between their passion and a long-term sustainable career. And we do that by focusing on the business of art. In fact, we have a slogan that says we teach artists how to think like entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs how to think like artists. So I want to welcome you to one of our continuing series of a fireside chat set of events where we interview and learn from accomplished working artists and creative founders. And it is my distinct privilege to have Gaddis here with us tonight, a good friend, a trailblazer, someone you're gonna love to hear from and learn from so many hard-won bits of wisdom. And I want to introduce you, Gay. So did you want to say something before I introduce you? Because this is
just welcome and thanks, Jan. Let's continue. Great.
This is a privilege to introduce you, and I have to work on summarizing such an extensive, multifaceted career. I do think that creatives in general, though, have that attribute where their careers are multifaceted and they continue to do multiple things, and they have the kind of creative thinking that enables them through a long career to continue to create and build. So I know you're gonna love hearing from Gay. So Gay is an artist and an entrepreneur. She's an author. She was a studio arts major. Any studio arts major tonight? Yay. Here at the College of Fine Arts. She was the founder of T3, which is an iconic brand, actually in Austin for about 30 years. She grew that under her leadership to become one of the largest independent creative firms and marketing firms that was led by a woman in the country. Through her speaking career, her book, Cowgirl Power, full title on that one, by the way, is Cowgirl Power, How to Kick Ass in Business and Life. Her board work, her custom leadership training. Gay is always focused on empowering the next generation of business leaders to take big leaps in their careers and in their lives. She's a contributor to Forbes and recently founded and launched Women Who Mean Business, a women's development program that she co-teaches at the Macomb School of Business here at the university. She's also an artist, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to be understanding more about her ability throughout this long career, now suddenly full circle to come back and create these bold and brilliant pieces of art that she now is hanging canvas in New York and in Santa Fe, and she's having to price them, and she's having to do all of these things that a lot of our artists are just starting out to do. She also has a cover. There it is, right there on the Texas CEO magazine. She has a cover article. You should go online and read that. It tells a little bit more about her background. But join me in welcoming Gay Gaddis.
Thank you.
And Gay, let me kick it off here because I know you and I talk a lot about a lot of things. But one of the things that we're both passionate about is mentorship. And a lot of the students here tonight and that will be listening online want to know, how did all this start? How did you get your start? And it did start with a mentor. Tell us a little bit about your high school art teacher that you talk so much about and how she impacted your life.
Well, for artists, it's interesting, and for those of you who are art students, probably you can look back and say, I was pretty good at that as a child. And I can remember my mother was a kindergarten teacher, and I can remember I was very active. And to keep me out of trouble, she would put me in the kindergarten class when the kids would leave with tempera paints and crayons and a little easel and just let me, have fun. And so I started working on little art projects from the time I was basically 3 years old, and then just continued. But the woman who made a big impact on me was a woman named Carolyn Hayes, and she was our high school art teacher. And I grew up in a very small town, Liberty, Texas, less than 10,000 people, and it was a real privilege to have someone dedicated to an art class in a school of our size. And she was really good. She was also a cowgirl. And, you know, I'm a bit one myself. I grew up riding horses and working cattle when I was about 6 years old, so I've been a cowgirl my whole life. We related. She really encouraged me, and I probably would not have majored in art had it not been for her, because she was saying, Gay, you really do have talent. You really should, you're going to make it someday in your creative pursuits. So I had that behind me. And just as a footnote, my father passed away when I was 13, and my mother and I really did not have a lot of money. I started working at 13. I got a job. My mother taught school. And so we were really kind of, you know, we were okay, but we were not flush with cash. So going off and majoring in art was a bit of a luxury, really, because I probably should have majored in business or something where I could have gotten out and gotten a more lucrative job right off the bat. But my mother supported me and wanted me to follow what I was good at and my passions. And again, she had watched me from the time I was a child, and it was the thing that almost calmed me down, that made me who I was, and she realized that it was the thing for me to do. And so off I came to the University of Texas and majored in fine arts. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Studio Art, not just BA. It's a full-blown 9 hours a week for 3 hours of credit, if you know what I mean. So I guess they still do that.
Well, I know a lot of studio arts majors and others that are in the College of Fine Arts are thinking, you know, right now, how did that connection work? And if you think about what you're doing within the studio arts program, many people may be thinking, how am I going to use this, and how does that connect to my career? How did it affect your career? What did you learn within studio arts, other than the obvious that you circled back and became a very important artist, but you didn't at first? How did that influence you in becoming an innovator and doing what you did?
Well, several things. The first job that I had out of college was at an advertising agency, and I could get a job in an ad agency because, now this dates me too, but we had to draw, because it was before you did all your comps and all your ideas on computers. It was literally hand-drawn comps, is what we call them. And I had to learn to even draw all the popular typefaces of the time. So I have a wall that was in my agency of all my noodle type on the wall so people could see how it all started. And so we had a real appreciation for type and for being able to draw and using markers and making these beautiful comps. So that was my first job. That's how I got in the advertising business. But I want to pick up on what Jan said. What were some of the things I learned here, other than just, oh yeah, I can draw and I can get a job in an ad agency? Because that wasn't really the path that my fine art professors would have wanted me to take, because going off and being in the ad biz was not necessarily using my skills as a true fine artist, as a working artist. But I did that because I needed a job and I had to make money, so I did. But one of the things that is very important that I learned here was the whole critique process. And we were critiqued a lot. I mean, several times a week and maybe several classes. And it helped you as an individual, especially at that age, to be able to understand that there are things that people need to tell you and give you feedback in that moment of how your work is perceived. What could you have done better? Perhaps that color combination really could have popped more had you done this. You could have gotten your idea across better had you done this. And so you get a bit of a thick skin and you realize, hey, it's not about me. Yeah, my art's personal, but it's not about me. It's about making me better. So I didn't realize this until I was kind of on in my career. And I thought, when we're critiqued for our advertising work, or when I'm critiqued on my performance, I don't take it personally. I take notes. I think about it. And then I internalize it and say, okay, maybe I don't agree with all that, but I do agree with these three things, and I'm going to take that and make myself better and learn from it. So the critiquing process is a really, really important, valuable tool that I learned. The other thing that I learned was just being around creative people and creative minds, and how exciting that was. Just enjoying the the spontaneous, sometimes witty, interesting things that would come from people, or how they express themselves. Because if you get a project in an art class, everybody sometimes would interpret it in their own way. And I'd be delighted to see how my colleague James would come forward with something totally different than what I would have thought of. So it was really exciting and interesting, and I loved it. And then you all will laugh because I did a lot of photography here too. I did a lot of work in the lab, and I had Gary Winogrand. If you want to do your homework, he was pretty famous, and he was our photography professor. And he had a way to critique you that would blow your socks off. And that was, he would say, I'm not going to look, just put up photos you think I should look at. So every week, we go to class, you put up the photos, and if he liked it, and he used a cane at this point, he would go up and just beat the heck out of that print that you worked really hard in the dark room to make look good. And that was how he showed you he liked it. And he'd always say, this isn't for the archives, you can always do better. Boom. So I would grab, every time though, one of my photos got the cane treatment, and so I would take those to my critique with him, and I made A's every time, and most people practically failed out of his class. But, I really learned from him, though, that, again, it's not, your art isn't always that precious. There's always a way to make it better. And so many lessons learned. And I had a lot of friends on campus who were business majors, law, pre-med, all that. So I got plenty of that kind of interaction from the rest of the campus. But coming over here was like a refuge with creatives, and I loved it.
That's awesome. I love hearing you talk about your genesis story and creating T3. There's a lot of great moments, but one of those is that the way you started, you took $16,000 of an IRA and cashed it in because you were mad at not getting a chance to do something, and started T3. So tell us a little bit about that and what made T3 different.
Well, it was $16,000. I started the company in 1989 in a very deep recession. The country was in very dire financial straits. And so I had been broke before in my life, and for some reason I thought, well, this is as good a time as any, but I almost was forced to start the agency because the company I was working for, we were losing business. We were losing clients, and it wasn't really our fault. It was just that everybody was cutting budgets and cutting their advertising. That's usually the first thing to go. If you're in business, you'll realize that the ad budget gets cut right off the bat, or marketing, when there's a recession or a downturn. So we were losing business, and I wrote a business plan that I thought would turn the company around. And I had a lot of people on board with me, except for one person that I had failed to bring along. And this is a very good lesson to learn. If you're trying to initiate change and you're trying to lead, you better make sure you bring the CEO along with you. Because what happened is I did not. You do need the groundswell. You need everybody else, but you got to take it from the top all the way through, and if you're going to really try to initiate change. So I didn't bring him along, and he was a bit shocked and taken aback at my approach. And he came to my office and said, I'm not going to support you. So I got furious. I was just, just completely humiliated and mad and everything else. And I just ran down the hall about 15 minutes later and quit. And I really didn't have a plan. Now, I don't recommend doing this. I did not have a strategy, but I realized at that moment, and I called my husband, I said, I'm going to have to go start an agency. What else can I do? No one's going to hire me. No one's hiring anybody right now. We're in a recession, of course. So I did, got the $16,000 IRA, started the company, and from the very beginning, we were about the business of the arts and the creative side, because I wanted everything we did to work, because I wanted clients to keep hiring us and paying us. So if we couldn't prove and measure what we did, even though it's wildly creative and would win awards, we wouldn't keep a client. So we were very diligent about that, and no one was more excited that when the internet came along and we could really, really measure stuff. And so we just became maniacal about our measurement, and we had a client called Dell, who you've heard of, and their mantra was, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And boy, I love that. So we were different. We did things that weren't always ads. We looked at things, and T3 stands for the think tank. And it was all about a collaborative approach and kind of going back to my art school days of watching these creative minds come together and saying, well, maybe it's not an ad, maybe it's a parade, maybe it's a this or that or the other. And we did a lot of interesting things that would get results for our clients. And it was just an exciting, innovative environment. I made it very easy for people to collaborate. We were named by Forrester Research as one of the top 5 innovation agencies in the world at one point. So it was true. I mean, we really were coming up with things that had never been done before. First to market, I could name you 20 things. We don't have time tonight. But it was all about honoring the creative spirit. And just think of all the creative people I heard through the years. Thousands, really, over that period of time. And yes, they were not fine artists, but many were musicians on the side. They were artists on the side, but they were working in a creative industry because they could make a good living there and contribute as a creative.
Well, tell us about that, because you have literally managed hundreds, if not more than that, creative thinking professionals. Do you manage differently? Do you manage someone who's a creative thinker different than someone who has a business thinking approach on the team?
Absolutely. And I always believe that because of my art background and my creative thinking background and the way I came through the business was different than a lot of agency owners who came from the business side. Because I really did understand the creatives and what kind of environment they needed, what kind of freedom they needed, and I could sell their work because I got it. And so they knew if they came to work for me that I'd go to bat for that really out there idea, or I would figure out a way to sell it through. And so I was good at that. I was really good at selling. And I said, all right, creatives, you do your thing, I'll go sell it. So it became an environment where we could attract some absolutely knockout talent. And I ended up opening offices in San Francisco, New York, in Atlanta. We had a small outpost in Chicago. The home base was always Austin. But we really attracted some amazing people for a company relatively as small as ours. But they liked it because we weren't a holding company agency and we could just move on the dime and do what we wanted to do and come up with ideas that we could throw out there, and it was a fun place to be most of the time. It was hard, but it was fun.
So, Gay, how did you get then from this place to now as a working artist and someone who is painting a lot of the time and very much hanging out in different circles sometimes? You have a lot of things on your plate. Tell us a little bit about how that transition happened now and how you're getting to be someone who's actually known for something as a completely unique talent that you never actually were able or had the time to chase earlier.
Yeah, that's the point. You know, when you're running an agency, and I had 3 children, and I was involved in a lot of activities and a lot of conferences and boards, and I've just done tons of work through the years, and I was burning the candle at both ends. So I didn't really take the time or have the time to focus on my own art. I was photographing a lot through the years, every chance I got, and I've just got countless negatives that I need to go back and rework. I actually have some pretty good stuff, I think. But what finally happened one day is, I don't know if you've ever seen the T3 building, but it's down on Lamar, and I was driving up the hill coming out of the parking lot one Friday afternoon, and there used to be an Azel Art Supply. Unfortunately, it closed during COVID. But I took a left turn. I didn't always want to take that. I never had taken that left turn for years. Took a left turn, parked there, walked in, bought some canvas, paint, and some brushes, and just an easel, and put it in the back of my Jeep, and I went off to the ranch that afternoon, and I put my easel outside. I didn't have a studio or anything, and I just started screwing around with it again, basically. Just started painting, and my husband laughed at me. He said, I'm kind of glad you're doing that. It's really good to see you back doing something you have fun doing. And so I started messing around, and I got really frustrated. And I was doing things very realistic, and then I would do this crazy abstract stuff. And then one day, it all kind of came together. And I won't tell you the long story, but it is a long story. But I ended up with a one-woman show in a gallery in New York in 2016. It was stunning to me. And you'll laugh, when I walked into the gallery to make the final deal with the gallery owner, and she said, yeah, we're going to do, yours will be a one-woman show. We're not doing a group show with you. I literally walked out of the gallery, and I was like a little kid. and I skipped down the street in New York to my favorite bar, and I was saying, I'm an artist. I'm an artist. I'm an artist. And I'd never been allowed to call myself that. And at that moment, I realized, yeah. And so all that happened, finished painting for the show, shipped the show to New York. There it was. And I walk in opening night, and I was scared to death because I thought, oh gosh, she believed in me. I like this work. But what if nobody buys anything? And that's the moment of truth, you know. Is anyone going to show up and buy anything? Some of these people don't know me at all. So that was the scary thing. But I did learn to price my art through her. She taught me the first fundamentals of that. And I have a book that you might want to look at. If you're trying to price your work ever, this isn't a great read. I'm going to tell you it's pretty boring. But it's called The Value of Art by Michael Finley. And if you read this or skim through it, it kind of gives you a sense of how to price your work. I think that's one of the toughest things for an artist, a working artist, is what is my art worth? And let me give you a little comparison to how I started thinking about my own work. In the advertising business, we had to price campaigns, we priced our projects, and it had creative time in it and other time. So we would count up how much time is it going to take, how much money do we pay these people, and how much do we have to charge per hour to cover their cost and make a profit? And so I was really good at that, and I understood the business of my own business. And we were always profitable every year. But we began to value, and clients had to learn to value what that creative thinking was worth. So you could do it that way and say, okay, we're going to spend 50 hours on this, and this is what it's worth, and this is what it costs. But then I also would say, yes, but what if it didn't take us 50 hours to do that? It took us 4, because we were so smart and we had used what I call the adjacent possible, all these thinking behind this, and all of a sudden it wasn't like a eureka moment, but we came up with this great innovative idea. It's worth the same thing. And you laughed and say, oh, I came up with that in the shower this morning. Well, maybe you did. And that idea could be just as valuable and make just as much money for the client as the idea that took 50, 60, 100 hours or more. So the value of your work is the value of the work and who you are. And sometimes I'll do a painting that takes me, days, hours, and hours. And I worked on 2 that were just so intense. And I named one of them The Devil's in the Details, and the other one's Beauty and the Beast, because it was a beast to do it. It's bigger than me. It was over 5 feet tall, and it was hard. I worked so hard on it. I priced it really high, and they sold, both of them. But there's sometimes that I'll do a painting, and it's just an inspiration, and it's 15 brush strokes, or maybe 20 or something. But there's just something magic about it. And it's beautiful. It's stunning in its own way, and it doesn't need one more touch of the brush on the canvas. And that's worth just as much to me as the big one, because it's about the beauty of the work. So learn to think about your art. Think about how many hours you put into it, though. What would you be paid per hour? You know, if you're getting paid $5 an hour, you're not even getting the minimum wage. So you got to think about the time you put in it and what it's worth, and be bold enough to charge for your time.
Where do you get your inspiration? Okay.
Well, these days, from the big Texas skies, and there's never a dull moment. I mean, they change every day, and it's just a never-ending opportunity to see what's out there. And I'm a planner, painter a lot. I do like to paint outside, not always, but a lot. And I do like to paint from life as much as possible. So I'm out with my canvas around sunset a lot. And if I don't paint it that day, I have a photographic memory, and I'm not kidding you, I really do. And I can literally remember the thing. But what I usually will do is I'll run out, if I can't paint then, and put out all the paint that I want to use so I don't forget the colors. And if I say, yeah, there was some fabulous hot pink in that sky, or whatever. So I put it all out, so when I go to paint the next day or whenever I can, I know I've captured the color palette that I was seeking.
She actually has a ranch, she and her husband Lee, out near Burnett, that is just fabulous, and that's where her studio and her gallery is. So when she talks about the inspiration from the skies, if you were visiting there, you understand what she means, because it's a beautiful, beautiful spot. I wanted to ask a question, though, about what are some of the mistakes that early artists make when you're like a lot of our students, just starting out, just trying to figure out how I can get going? What are some of those mistakes that you've seen that can slow you down or keep you from actually realizing your dream?
Yeah. Well, see, I didn't go straight into fine art. I was probably afraid to. And I was timid about my work, and I was more interested, and I had to make money. I didn't have any, I had to. I mean, I didn't have any other income. So I had to go out and get a job. But the thing that I know now that I wish I could have told my younger self at the time is I'm a marketer. You know, I've spent all these years marketing products and services for other people. So what I was able to do was apply those marketing skills to myself. And I've worked for many years, and it was part of how we sold T3 on my own brand. You have the brand of Gaddis. That's why I wrote the book, to share my wisdom, but to get the name out and to get T3's name out. That's why, you know, when I do gallery shows, we do beautiful catalogs like this. And
It's beautiful.
yeah, they're really pretty. And so they're all the same. They're all the same size, and it features some of the work inside. And it's got my artist statement. You've got to have a really strong artist statement and build a mystique about who you are. And some of the stories behind you. Because people buy art because they like it, and they also buy it because who the artist is. And I've watched this, and that's why if I do a gallery show, I don't bug the people coming in, but I'm present as much as possible. And we host events there so people can hear your story. They want to know what inspires you. They want to know what it's like to be painting. They want to know what's in your heart and who you are. So for me right now, I mean, the fact that I've had this career in doing this, I'm now applying, though, to my own self and as an artist. And it was new. I mean, I couldn't rattle off some of the top artists or galleries or anything when I started this again. So I've had to completely immerse myself into an industry that I was kind of loved, but not in it. So I do a lot of email marketing. I keep a great list of buyers. Anyone who's been needs something, we're very, very active about helping them place the art. I'm very involved in the pricing. You know, I'm really cognizant of what the market will bear. And we reach out to people. We have events at the gallery, or I try to show in other galleries and get new people involved. So it's work. You know, it's just as much work to market yourself as it is to do the work. And you have to really think about, how am I going to reach buyers and people who will spread the word? It's great if you can get PR. I mean, outside sources. Gosh, I didn't even plan this, but I guess it was because who I was already. I mean, I had a reputation as a business person, but Texas Monthly a few years ago wrote me up as one of the top 10 artists in Texas to collect. And that is the article that has kept on giving. In fact, I sold a painting last week, because if you Google that right now, it comes right back up. And so a couple from Fort Worth drove all the way out to our gallery at the ranch, bought a beautiful painting, and I didn't know them at all. I'd never heard of them. But any PR, you know, any of the art news, anything you can get about you, and you have to work at it. You know, you got to meet those people. You got to hang out where they are, and they've got to get involved in your work. So it's an ongoing marketing challenge, and you build your brand and make it consistent, because people don't remember you if you're all over the place. My work changes a little bit. Sometimes it's a little more realistic than others, but I'm right now known for bold skies, big moons, those things. And so I'm not trying to paint everything in the world that pops in my view. I'm trying to build a brand right now about that. At some point, if that's big enough and I've sold through that, I may shift gears a bit, because all artists do. But it's really consistency, showing up, learning your craft, learning where people are, and keeping the word out. Having a great website, a really elegant one that's easy to work with and easy to buy out of. People are buying art online all the time. People are buying pieces of digital art. You know, I'm just going to own a piece of that. I'm investing in that. And they never have it. It's just part of this investment strategy, like you'd invest in a Monet, and it's got crowdsourcing and bringing in 50 people who'll buy a piece of this, rather than one big buyer at art auction paying $101 million for, you know, a Manet or whatever. So, yeah.
We both of us have a favorite phrase that, you know, success is not about a straight line. There is no such thing as a straight line to success. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of trial and error. There's opportunities that you think are going to come out and that don't. I'm just curious what your advice would be for students that are in that mode of really trying to build their brand. You don't really have an assurance that you have your brand yet, but you're trying things. What would be the most important thing that you would suggest that they focus on first? Because it can be a big, almost overpowering thing to try to do if you're trying to boil the ocean.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying about the consistency. So if you think about what Jan's saying, all my life kind of is inextricably linked. So I'm painting the skies at our ranch. My book is about cowgirl power, about business power. I'm authentic to that. My company head was we called our, management meetings roundup, and, all these things. I'm a cowgirl, that's who I am. It's who's in my heart. I'm a small town girl from Texas that's authentic, and I have just real world experience. I tell it like it is. And so in everything I do, so the ranch is where the paintings are. It's where our longhorn cattle are. It's where people come. It's where I get my inspiration. It's where we used to bring people from our company out for brainstorming. So all that is just kind of this world of who I am. And if you are, whatever it is, just be authentic to you and what you love and who you are. And it just needs to come through in everything, because you can't be something you aren't, or it doesn't work. It's impossible to keep pretending. So just be who you are and build your brand around that. It will evolve. It will change. You're young. But if you're always true to yourself and march in that direction, then people will understand you and they'll get it.
And I'm glad you mentioned the word consistency a lot, because that's key. Having a consistent approach. A brand is almost a promise to your audience. What do they expect when they come and see something that you have touched, or a graphic or whatever? What is it that is consistent? I would be interested to know if you ever have, like, writer's block has, an impact on writers. What about just the creative block that happens sometimes when you're with your easel and out at the ranch?
Can I say one thing about brand real quick?
Yeah.
So I guess all of you all know that brands come from cattle brands. And if you have registered Longhorns, they have to still be branded. And so this is our ranch brand right here, Double Heart. And it's been in the family since 1860. So that's where the concept of branding came from. And you know why? Because you had to identify, that one is mine. I own that. So when you think about your brand, you own it. It's yours. And you think about all the big companies and how much money they spend on maintaining their brands and their colors and everything. So red is my color, black's my, red and black and all those things. So I say that. But then let's go to what Jan just said. Yeah, there are times that I just I can't make myself go to the easel. I just can't. I don't do commission pieces, although I did an interesting piece the other day, and someone called me early January and who collects my work. And he said, I have a really good friend who's getting married January the 22nd. And I would love it if you could just go out and look at the sunset that night, whatever it is, and paint it. And I said, okay, Rick, I'll do it, but you may not like it. I don't care, and you don't have to buy it. So he came out to the ranch the other day, and I painted it, and it really is pretty fabulous. And so he wants it, and he's going to give it to them as a gift on their wedding day, and I think it's a really cool thing. So I was able to do that, although I don't do commission pieces hardly ever. But there are times if I'm facing a health challenge like I had recently, and some things, financial challenges, or just anything that's kind of tough that's going on in my life, it's really hard to go stand in front of the canvas. But then on the other hand, it's therapeutic for me too. So sometimes if I'll just make myself, I always say this, you got to push yourself a lot in life. Sometimes you don't feel like showing up. Sometimes you don't want to go to that extra meeting. God, I'd get on a plane sometimes to go to a client meeting and say, I don't know if I've got it left in me, I'm worn out. But sometimes we do have to push ourselves. And if you take one step, and then the next and the next, sometimes then it's good. So a lot of times if I'm feeling like, I don't know if I can even go in the studio today, I'll just say, okay, we're going to go and just pull out a canvas and we know what we saw yesterday, so just start getting it down. And then all of a sudden I'm in it and I feel good, or I get mad at my paintings, and I'm sure you do too sometimes if you're an artist. I'll go, oh, this isn't working at all. So I learned something from my border collies. There's a term at border collies where if they're pursuing, and you want them to stop, you say, leave it. And their command is to stop right there. Do not pursue the cow. Do not pursue the sheep. So sometimes I'm looking at my painting, I'm so mad at it and it's not working. I go, leave it. Walk away. Just get away from it. And maybe it's an hour, 2 hours, or 2 days. I go back. I go, oh, yeah, that's what's wrong, because you need that perspective. You got to get away. Break it, get back. Break it, get back. And that works for me.
How do you keep from coming down on yourself in a moment like that?
Oh, I get really mad at myself. I'm very hard on myself anyway. I just am. I mean, but I'm not so hard that I like me too. But I'm also hard about, gosh, couldn't you have done more? Couldn't you have given more? Couldn't you have done one more thing today? And so occasionally I have to back off of me. And I've started working out. I'm lifting a lot of weights now. I'll do yoga. I do things just to kind of, God, just give yourself a break. You know, got to stand back. So it's hard though. When you're critical of yourself, sometimes you're biggest critic, but that's when it helps to have people that I call rough riders. Again, my cowgirl terms. People who'll come around you and say, and it helps me so much when someone calls me and says, you know, I saw that painting online. I love it. I want that one. It's so beautiful. And that makes you feel good again. And so take the compliments as they come and be happy about that. Take the critique. But sometimes being hard on yourself isn't always bad, because it may push you to the next big thing. So don't be afraid of that if it happens.
So I want to give our students time to ask some questions. Be thinking about those questions you would like to ask Gay. But tell us a little bit, Gay, about what's next. What's next for you as an entrepreneur and as an artist?
You know, that's always exciting, because I'm a what's next kind of person. I'm always, you probably don't care about Myers-Briggs, but I'm an ENTP on the Myers-Briggs, and we're always thinking of the possibilities, what's next, and that's how I live my whole life. So I've really been thinking about another book. This one would be a little different, but another book. I'm wanting to expand my program at the University of Texas on the women's executive leadership. We're already talking about doing some one-day seminars, reaching out to larger groups. I like to scale things. And I learned that, again, all the years working for Dell, because they would look at us and say, how are we going to scale this? You know, it's great to go sell to this company this many computers, but we've got to sell 15,000 times that. So what are we going to do to scale this? What's the marketing plan? So I always think that. Sometimes things don't want to be scaled, you know. They need to be intimate and small and the way they are, and you got to live with that. But for me as an artist, how do I produce good work? How do I produce work that's going to get to more people? I've got to keep expanding my audiences and looking for new venues and new people to bring in the circle. Because even though you have collectors, and I hope you do at some point, I do have collectors, there's only so many they're going to collect, and then you got to find other people. So I'm looking, constantly expanding that. Getting that other book done. It's a big job to write a book. It takes a lot of effort and discipline. But I do have one in me. I know it's there, and so I want to do that. And then I want to give back more and more. You will come to a place in your career and life where it's better to give back sometimes than anything else. It's so gratifying. That's why I'm here tonight. I hope you get something out of this, you know. And so I'm looking at ways that I can touch more people. And Jan said, you know, our ranch is between Marble Falls and Burnett, and they have a really good little art program at the small school in Marble Falls. And I want to maybe reach out to those students, those high school kids, and bring them out there. And so I'm just always thinking about, okay, how can I find a way to be meaningful? And if anything I do or say would help someone in their own journey, then that gives me a lot of satisfaction and gratification. And I'm on boards where I do that. I'm on the board of the Texas Cultural Trust, which is a really interesting organization. And I wanted to tell you one thing, just to give you the magnitude of art in Texas. We do a study every year called the State of the Arts. And this is really interesting because across Texas, there are about 900,000 people who are employed in creative careers. It's not a lot, but it's a pretty big number. And it also has given $6.1 billion to the Texas economy every year. That's a lot. And nearly $380 million in state sales tax revenues. So art careers do mean business. And there are artists that are contributing in many different fields. They're actually creating value to our economy. So I want to teach more people about that. It's great to be in creative careers because you enrich our lives, you give back, and you actually add to the economy if you're a working artist in some way that you're actually getting income and then paying tax and doing what you have to do.
The creative economy is what she's really talking about, is one of the fastest growing areas of the economy that we have today. And it's interesting to think of us as, when we're thinking about ourselves as creatives, there's so many different things you can do with that. It's not just about hanging canvases. It's, you know, it's really understanding that as a freelancer, as a designer, that free in the freelance does not mean free. It's understanding the business side of that, to be able to join in that part of the economy and really begin to have a career that's sustainable. One of the things I love about talking to so many accomplished artists and other creative founders and having our students be able to meet different ones is that it doesn't matter what discipline in the arts that you're in at all. You learn something by listening to Gay and to others. You learn something about the grit, the stay-to-itiveness, the ambiguity, the failure, the things that you have to go through to be able to find yourself and find that brand and make that happen. So any chance you get to actually talk to someone, it doesn't have to be in your exact area or your field. It's the same things that entrepreneurs go through, the exact same journey. It's just a little bit different for different people. But I think what you can see is the resilience riding behind everything that Gay is talking about is one of the main things that she really stands out in, is that you have to be resilient. You have to continue. You have to try, and you have to believe in yourself and surround yourself with mentors, and ultimately you get there. It's not a straight line. Well, Gay, you're amazing, and you are welcome back anytime. We want to have more of this. We want more of you. I want to give her a round of applause for being with us tonight and giving back.
And I will I'll give you an open invitation. If you want to get in touch with me, we have open houses at the gallery sometimes. Mm-hmm. And now that COVID world is not quite as restrictive, would be glad if you would like to get on either my email list, because I do send out an email newsletter that's part business and part art, always. So if you want to give me your email address or give it to Jan and she can get it to me.
So Vanessa will send that out to everyone who's registered today.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So if you want to get that, or if you want to check in and see when we're having any open houses, we'd love to invite you to come out and see for yourself.
I also want to thank Vanessa Riley for pulling this together tonight and pulling together some drinks and snacks. If you want afterwards to stay and talk a little bit, please imbibe. But thank you for coming out to the Center for Creative Entrepreneurship, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, I want to thank you also. Thank you for your attention and your great questions.
All right.